A 1,000-year-old church is on fire tonight in Kyiv, Ukraine, not because of an accident, not because of an electrical fault, because Russia fired a missile directly at the Kyiv Pechersk Lavra, one of the most sacred religious sites in the entire Christian world, a UNESCO World Heritage site that has stood for nearly 1,000 years and is burning tonight after Russia launched its largest attack on Ukraine's capital in 2 weeks, second drones. 70 ballistic missiles, all in one night, all targeting the same city. At least 9 people are dead. 29 are wounded, including a pregnant woman and 2 children aged 5 and 6. 140,000 homes are without electricity right now, and the roof of a church that survived wars, empires, and centuries of history is on fire. We are going to break down exactly what happened tonight, why this monastery matters so much, what Russia's real message is, and what the world needs to do about it. Russia launched this attack in the early hours of Monday morning, June 15th, when most people in Kyiv were asleep. The first explosions hit just after midnight. Then came wave after wave, drones first, then ballistic missiles, targeting districts across the entire city simultaneously: Obolonsky district, Podilsky, Pechersk, Solomyansky. Every major district of Kyiv was hit at the same time. This was not a targeted military strike. This was a deliberate, coordinated assault on a civilian capital. In Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, Russia used a tactic that shocked even seasoned military observers. They struck first, then waited for rescue workers to arrive, then struck again, directly targeting the firefighters and paramedics trying to save lives. 5 rescue workers were killed that way. 5 more were wounded. People whose only job was to help other people, deliberately killed by a second Russian strike. The Kyiv Pechersk Lavra, also known as the monastery of the caves, was struck by a missile that set the roof of its Dormition cathedral on fire. Let me tell you what this place is, because the numbers alone do not capture what was lost tonight. This monastery was founded in the 11th century. That means it existed before the Crusades, before the Ottoman Empire, before Columbus sailed to America, before Shakespeare wrote a single word. For nearly 1,000 years, through Mongol invasions, through the collapse of empires, through 2 world wars, this monastery stood. It survived everything until tonight. The complex is not just a single church. It is an entire world built into the hills above the Dnipro River, monasteries, chapels, and beneath it all, a labyrinthine network of caves stretching more than 600 meters underground. These caves hold some of the most sacred shrines and relics in the Orthodox Christian world. Icons painted by hands that lived centuries ago, manuscripts written by monks who are now saints, the burial places of figures who shaped the history of this entire region. UNESCO recognized this site as a World Heritage Site, meaning it belongs not just to Ukraine, but to all of humanity. It is in the same category as the Pyramids of Egypt, the Colosseum in Rome, and the Great Wall of China, a place that the entire world agreed must be protected forever. Russia fired a missile at it tonight. When the fire broke out, Bishop of Rami immediately ordered an emergency evacuation of the monastery's most sacred objects. Monks and volunteers ran through flames and smoke carrying ancient icons, religious artifacts, and irreplaceable relics, trying to save what they could before the fire consumed everything. According to reports, they succeeded in preserving the most important valuables. But the building itself, the Dormition Cathedral, its golden domes, its roof that has sheltered worshippers for 1,000 years, was damaged. The full extent of the damage is still being assessed as firefighters continue to battle the blaze. Metropolitan Epiphanius, the head of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, watched the flames from outside and posted on social media. He wrote, "The roof of one of the holiest places in the Christian world is burning. This is another Russian crime against humanity, against history, against Christianity. We ask for prayers against humanity, against history, against Christianity." Those are not words a religious leader uses lightly, and it was not just the Lavra that burned tonight. The Mistetsky Arsenal, a national cultural and museum complex located directly across from the monastery, also caught fire. The Dovzhenko National Film Studio, Ukraine's oldest and largest film studio, was struck too. Its entire costume workshop was destroyed. Ukraine's largest historical costume collection, assembled over decades, is gone in one night. One attack. Russia destroyed or damaged a 1,000-year-old church, a national museum complex, and a century of cinematic history. Now let us talk about timing, because the timing of this attack is not accidental. Just yesterday, Sunday, June 14th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke directly with US President Donald Trump. The two leaders discussed diplomatic efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. There was momentum. There was movement. People were starting to talk about peace. And then, in the early hours of the very next morning, Russia launched its biggest attack in 2 weeks. This is Russia's answer to diplomacy. This is what Moscow thinks of peace talks. Every time there is a signal that negotiations might move forward, Russia escalates. Every time the world starts talking about a ceasefire, Russia reminds everyone who has the missiles. Russia's defense. Ministry released a statement saying they had targeted what they called defense industrial complex facilities in Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Dnipropetrovsk defense industrial complex. That is what Russia is calling a 1,000-year-old monastery. That is what they are calling a museum. That is what they are calling a film studio. That is what they are calling the apartment buildings where families with young children were sleeping. This is not a military operation. This is state terrorism dressed in military language. Now let us look at the numbers, because the scale of this attack needs to be understood. Russia used 611 drones and 70 ballistic missiles in a single night. Ukraine's air defense systems worked through the night, intercepting what they could. But when you fire 681 projectiles at a single city, some are going to get through. And tonight, too many got through. 40,000 households lost power. In June, that means no air conditioning in summer heat. No refrigerators, no lights. No ability to charge phones or call for help. For 140,000 Ukrainian families, tonight is a night of darkness, fear, and grief, and the human cost. At least 9 people confirmed dead as of this report, 29 wounded. Among the wounded, a pregnant woman, 2 children, one 5 years old, one 6 years old. Children who went to sleep last night not knowing that by morning they would be in a hospital. Their only crime, living in a city that Russia has decided to destroy. The international response has been swift and strong. The United Nations condemned the attack. The European Union called it a war crime. The United States expressed outrage. Multiple governments around the world issued statements demanding accountability. But here is the uncomfortable truth that every statement and every condemnation has to confront. Condemnations have not stopped Russia before. Statements have not stopped Russia before. The monastery burned tonight regardless of how many times the world said such attacks were unacceptable. The question the world has to answer is not whether this attack was wrong. Everyone agrees it was wrong. The question is, what actually changes after tonight? Because here is what we know about Russia's strategy. Russia is not trying to win a military victory in the traditional sense anymore. Russia is trying to break Ukraine's will. Destroy its infrastructure, eliminate its cultural identity, make Ukrainian life so unbearable that the people demand their government accept any peace deal, no matter how humiliating, just to make the attacks stop. Striking the Kyiv Pechersk Lavra is part of that strategy. When you destroy a nation's most sacred religious site, you are not just destroying a building. You are attacking the soul of a people. You are saying, nothing you love is safe. Nothing you value will be protected. Everything can be taken from you. Ukraine has refused to break. Through 4 years of full-scale war, through thousands of missile strikes, through the loss of cities, infrastructure, and irreplaceable lives, Ukraine has not broken. But every night like tonight makes that resistance harder. Every church that burns, every museum that falls, every child that is wounded. The cost keeps rising. There are 3 things you need to watch in the next 48 hours to understand where this goes. Watch whether the UN Security Council calls an emergency meeting. Russia will veto any resolution, it always does. But the discussion that happens in that chamber will tell you exactly where each country stands right now. Watch whether Trump responds directly to this attack. He spoke with Zelensky yesterday about peace. Russia attacked Kyiv hours later. Does Trump now put pressure on Russia? Or does he continue pursuing a deal that Russia keeps undermining with its own missiles? And watch Ukraine's military response. Ukraine has shown in recent months that it is willing and able to strike targets inside Russia itself. Energy infrastructure, military facilities, strategic sites. After an attack of this scale, expect Ukraine to respond. A 1,000-year-old church is burning tonight in Kyiv. 9 people are dead. Children are in hospitals. 140,000 families are sitting in the dark, and the world is watching, again, as it has watched for 4 years. The question that has never been answered, and must be answered tonight, is when watching becomes doing. Subscribe right now. I will be updating this story as it develops. New casualty figures, international response, and Ukraine's reaction. You need to stay ahead of this. Tell me in the comments, what do you think the world should do after tonight? Drop your answer below. See you in the next one.